Well, welcome to our experiment. Simple questions for 100 people. This is a research project to gather data from 100 beautiful human beings for the sole purpose to see what actually happens across the interviews. So the questions are fixed and all the interviews will remain consistent, with the variable being the actual participants themselves. And although we're kind of unsure of what we're going to discover, if anything, upon completion, we remain very interested in the people, the process, and their and your particular stories. You'll get to know our guests through the interview. So let's dive in. And with that said, I'd like to introduce our guest for this podcast. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce guest number one. Lisa, what is your full name?
Well, if you include my confirmation name, it's Lisa Ann Marie Sheehan.
That's beautiful. Confirmation name. I have one of those too. It's Joseph. So, since you have those four names, what is your favorite nickname that most people don't know?
When my mother's feeling especially affectionate toward me, she calls me Leela.
Can you spell that?
Leela.
Leela. I like that. Is there a story that goes along with that?
No, but I've since found out that it means other things in different languages too. I think in Sanskrit or something, it's bliss, that kind of thing, or
Yeah.
um, and it doesn't come out that often, but when it does,
That's marvelous. Obviously, it makes you feel good to think about that word in your mother. No doubt about it.
definitely.
Okay. So, when did you first notice what color hair you had?
Ooh. I think I probably was relatively young because I was really blonde young. Um, and I had cousins that weren't, and I lived two houses away from my cousins, and I had two sisters, so there were three of us all together. And my cousins, there were four of them, a boy and three girls, and one was like a white blonde, and they were all different. So one was a white blonde, one was a dirty blonde, one was brown haired, completely brown haired. So I think there was a definite difference. And way back when, um, our local paper, there was a photographer. I don't think you could do this anymore. That would go around, and they had it like the children's corner in the Cheshire Herald, and they would post different pictures that this guy would go around and take random pictures of people of kids. And most of us, at least I had at least one of mine that was taken when I was about 10 years old. But and things come out like that, like, oh, you're blonde, or is your mother blonde, that kind of thing. So
Interesting. How's it feel thinking about that and remembering this story?
oh, it's interesting because I love the children's court. I could still picture my picture in the newspaper, just hanging out by. But it was like the telephone pole wires, not the dangerous ones.
Right. The phone wires, yeah.
Yeah, it was just hanging out by that and just having a random picture taken of me. But it was a good picture, so I remember it affectionately.
Awesome. And what age was that again?
I was probably about 10. No, yeah, it
Pretty
was a good
cool.
picture. Yeah, I still have it.
So, what is your favorite thing to do to intentionally waste time?
Well, intentionally waste and make good use of time is walking for me. It doesn't matter if it's around the block or down the canal path that we call it, the old railroad tracks, or it doesn't matter. That's and reading is another way I like to waste time.
Do you ever think that you intentionally waste time?
I don't. Oh, probably watching TV. That is actually that's probably my really go-to now that I think about it. But I was brought up with that little thing in the kitchen and in the living room, and it was a big part of our day, even though our evenings, I should say. Back there wasn't that many channels to choose from, but it was still there, and it keeps me company. That kind of thing. It's the noise in the background.
Awesome. So, what is your favorite movie to watch alone?
Because I watch It's a Wonderful Life every year, and because I cry every year, I think I prefer watching it alone so that I could just let loose and not have to worry about what people are thinking, because I've seen it a million times.
I don't know how anybody makes it through that movie dry-eyed. They got to be a special kind of something. Let's put it that way.
Right?
Absolutely. So let me see here. If you were to have an action figure made of you, what superpower would it have, and what colors would its uniform be?
Every I am a purple freak, so I'd have to have purple in it somewhere. Especially if it's going to represent me. I think my superpower, I'd like to fly without the use of mechanical apparatus. Yeah, that's a good, interesting question. Yeah.
Do you ever dream about flying?
I consider flying. I don't know if I've ever dreamt of flying. I know I've died in my dreams, which is one of those unusual things. But flying, because on this planet, in my humanness, I consider flying a necessary evil to get from one place to another. I enjoy being up in the clouds and looking down, but I know I am thousands of feet away from terra firma, so I don't like that aspect of it. But
Good self-talk at that point, don't you?
a lot of it, yeah. Or writing, you journal a lot or read, yeah.
How frequently do you fly?
Well, obviously I haven't in a little while, but I did I would say once a year kind of thing. And I did the Australia thing. I think it was 2017. No, I don't think, maybe it was 2017. And that's a flight that can take you out because it's so long. And you just wonder how you're staying up there, and when are they refueling?
Oh, hope they brought an extra couple gallons, huh?
Right? Yeah, because you could watch you could track the flight path of the airplane on your screen and see how much longer you have to go and how many meals you're getting. When's the next one?
On that flight especially, because that one just goes on forever, doesn't it?
Oh, it's 20. Yeah, it's 20. Well, yeah, and then we did, to save money, we did how long of a layover? It was a 10-hour layover in LA. It was something ridiculous. So we did a tour of LA while we were there. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, you were up in the air for a while.
And what did you see on the tour?
Oh, in LA, well, we went to the Hollywood sign. I am a Bravo fan freak. So I went to some of the Beverly Hills Housewives haunts.
Good for you.
And Grauman's Chinese Theater, and that all that kind of Rodeo Drive. Saw some of the hills that had just burnt as usual during the summer and with the brush fires and stuff. But
yeah, that's not something you soon forget, is it?
No, and because I was in San Francisco right after that big earthquake that happened a while ago now, and they had, I didn't know what it was at the time, but they were just slats of material that were holding the two parts of the bridge over the highway apart from each other. because
Right.
they collapsed onto each other. And it was like, oh, that's freaky to see.
Was that the one in the early 90s?
Yeah, with the
Took out 880 and pancaked all of the overpasses.
right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. So you saw these structures trying to keep them apart. It was shortly thereafter. So it was kind of like, oh crap, that's what they're doing there.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, what did you want to grow up to be when you were 5 years old?
It's fun. My mother had done a one of those photo montages at one of my bigger birthdays, and there's a picture of me as a little girl, and I remember this outfit specifically because it was a dress and a jacket, and it had wings on it. So, and I thought that was like the perfect outfit for a stewardess.
It's always a flying motif, huh?
Oh, you're right.
Very interesting. So, what is your greatest accomplishment?
That's a good one. I don't know if I could specifically answer that without. 'Cause I feel like my answer should be I don't know yet. It hasn't happened yet. In my mind is the proper answer. I accomplished something when I was, I wanted to be a copywriter when I grew up, and I became that in my early 20s. So, and I'm trying to think of something that is much more um, life achieving or broader than that, I should say. So I'm constantly, always looking for something to better myself in the world and see what the fun is, and what's the next big thing. Following the breadcrumbs is what I've been trying to do. So
I can say this because we are dear friends. You are kind of like on those swinging rings, going from big accomplishment
flying.
to big accomplishment, so that it probably doesn't seem like there's a lot of uh, mountain peaks in your accomplishment career, because you've been at a high level of performance and excellence for a very, very long time.
And I think the one thing I could honestly say is that I do take chances, or I will follow that breadcrumb. So, I moved to California when I was in my middle, low 20s. My best friend from high school and I, we drove across country, just the two of us, to land out there. And I stayed there for a couple of years. But, a lot of people, although you would say it, won't actually do it. So, it cemented my love for this area, and that I am definitely a New Englander, and that I need to be around friends and family that, that have that home place to me in my heart. And then I've changed jobs, and I've tried new entrepreneurial uh, adventures, shall we say. So, I mean, I do take chances, I guess you could say, and try to see what life can bring me by taking those chances.
Yeah, and you're a complete unit. You are constantly, looking for different ways to just kind of expand your thinking. And I'm probably going a little bit more into this than I will with anybody else that I interview, but we are friends, and I do know, that from all of the work that we've done together, um, you're always asking questions. That's kind of like who you are. With that, I'll get back to my questions. So, who is your favorite person to listen to?
Are you using listen to in any particular way, or you just want to see how it hits me?
It's your question.
Lately, and for a while, one of my favorite go-tos is Wayne Dyer, even though he has passed. Um, I could watch him on the old CPTV shows, or I mean, now with the beauty of YouTube, you can listen to him all the time, which he actually, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll put on one of his longer like audiobooks or audience workshops that he did, and I'll fall right back to sleep because it takes my mind off of something and focuses on one of his good lessons. But that's one thing, one serious thing, you know.
Do you have
If
a
you want,
favorite lesson of his?
pardon me.
What is your favorite Wayne Dyer lesson?
Oh my. And there's so, I mean, because there's so many of his, you know, change your thoughts, change your life. You know, he studied the Tao Te Ching, and I, you know, he's made me look at other things that I might not have taken the chance or taken the opportunity to read. Because I know he put a lot of research into everything that he speaks about. And they seem so simple. Because I just listened to one of his things last night. I don't even know if I could say I have a favorite one.
I know I'm sitting here recalling how he would come out to do his speaking tour after having taken 3 or 4 months just to go away and be isolated,
Mm-hmm.
write his thoughts down, and then organize those thoughts in some sort of a presentation. And I really love his presence, and the thing that always stuck out in my mind was his commitment to getting exercise every single day. Whether he was well or felt unwell, he ran. And
Yep.
that usually got rid of whatever symptoms that he thought he might be having for the most part.
And he wasn't, I mean, he's quick to tell you that he wasn't always the way he is. You know, it took him, you know, after a while he quit drinking because he realized what it was doing to him. And one day he just decided that wasn't what he's going to do. And it was like cold turkey. That's it. It wasn't like he was drinking a lot, but he needed it every day. He needed his beer every day. I remember him telling that story. And yeah, the exercise he started running, I think it's 8 miles a day. He did it for decades. And his wife at one point said, maybe that's a little obsessive, don't you think? And he didn't do it for one day, and he realized it wasn't obsessive. He liked to do it. But yeah, the intensity, the trips he made to Europe with his groups where he experienced miracles at, you know, at St. Francis of Assisi, you know, that kind of thing. Or even his movie, The Shift. And he's not even an actor. And I mean, I thought it was pretty well done and still got his message across.
Absolutely. Very, very good message deliverer. And I will always remember my friend, the scurvy elephant.
The scurvy elephant. That's
some of our listeners will get that joke. So,
and he didn't have an easy childhood either. So it's not like, you know, he was in foster care for a few years until his mother got him back when he was like 10, you know, quite a few years. So,
yeah.
And he treats that as like one of his best life lessons because I got to do that because nobody was looking out for me. So I would play in the apple orchards and got back in time for dinner. Nobody cared.
One man's adversity is another man's adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Lisa, please complete this sentence for me, if you will. When I grow up, I'd like to
be an elder.
And what is an elder to you?
I've told you that one before, but because I don't want, as far as like dream occupation, or now that we have we've talked about this before too, of our generation was like one of the first to be able to think about having a different idea of a livelihood and what you can do with your days that weren't just somebody telling you how much you were worth an hour and you buying into it. And staying that way forever. So I'm still trying to figure out what I would like to do that's on a daily basis that fulfills my soul and my bank account.
Yeah. They're not mutually exclusive.
No, it doesn't have to. I know.
The whole idea of enlightenment through poverty is probably a little bit oversold.
Yeah, don't buy it. Nope.
All right. So, what's the most important thing in life to you right now?
Um, right now, I think it's, as I remember hearing somebody recently say that balance is important, but the better word is harmony. So I am trying to find harmony in my life that takes into consideration all aspects of me and how it fits into the world, basically the planet,
That's
and my
awesome.
effect on it.
So, because I love to smith word salads. Uh, Harmony, in your view, in your the way that that word and that feeling strikes you, how would you describe the presence or being in uh, the space of harmony to somebody who might not know?
Well, I always think that harmony, because it's a fluid um, concept, and my placement in every moment is going to depend on the influences that are around me, and it's never going to be the same. So I would just like to literally dance with those energies and see how um, best play it out. To do a lot of play on words there. um, because as we know, anything, relationships, there's no equal percentages. You can't have 50-50, and even in a relationship, it should be like, it's sometimes it's 20-80, and sometimes it's 30-70, and sometimes it's 0 and 100, but you have to like work in work in collaboration with that and try to find that harmonious balance between the two. And that affects, to me, not only other people, but every living thing on the planet. So, how can I live in harmony with the trees and the plants and the cornies and basils?
Yeah, exactly. Inside joke from our podcast. I love it. And now here's kind of like the last important question. And what would you like to leave in the world after your life is done?
I would like to leave an impression. It's a
Say some
bit,
more.
yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of perfectly put like that, when I never thought of it in those terms. Um, and it doesn't have to be anything momentous, but that I mattered to somebody enough to remember for a long time. Through
Beautiful.
generations too, I'd like to. Then there was Aunt Lisa. Oh boy.
Good for you. Well, that's the old saying that as long as somebody's still speaking your name, you're still here.
Yep.
And of course, uh, I'm taking the baker's dozen approach to my dozen questions here. And you know what bakers do? They always give you an extra question, right? Or an extra donut or an extra piece of bread or whatever. So my baker's question is, what would you say is the thing that most people misunderstand about you?
I often, when I am upset, people confuse it to be that I am mad or angry. Um, Probably because one of my horrible ways of being upset is like the silent treatment. They're just not reacting at all. So I shut down, and people perceive that as I'm just flat out mad, but I'm really deeply upset. And I don't know, haven't yet formulated the words to express that. So people, yeah, come away with the wrong impression. And it can be detrimental to a conversation, that's for sure. And not that I've lost any people over it, but I've had to have difficult conversations after the fact.
A few tough moments, in other words.
Right.
Yeah. Well, good. Do you have any questions of me?
What? Yes. What was the catalyst for this whole program?
That's a great question. You and I both love people a lot. And I'm very interested, as well as you. We're partners in this, of actively making people's lives better by empowering them to be their better self. Which better self? The one they say. And that means that they always have the opportunity for a best day ever, or personal best, or best that they can just for today. So my thought was, I've been hearing an awful lot about groups, an identity this and that, and convergence and whatever. And, I'm sure that conversation has a very, very good place. However, I'm concerned that maybe individuals, the uniqueness and the specialness of every single person with their distinct DNA, their name, their location in space and time, the difference that they make on a daily basis, like you, going around doing the things that you do every single day that no one will ever know and no one ever sees. I am just interested how 100 different people will answer these questions. And I'm doing this from a very selfish standpoint. I have beautiful family. I have 2 son-in-laws of color. I've got, my grandchildren that are both directly descended from Governor William Bradford on one side and from Navajo Nation on the other side. And all of that is a source of pride and curiosity for me, like all the things that I'll never know because there's nobody here to really tell me more about it. But I want to find out, if you strip everything else away, what do people have in common? So I'm using this litmus test of these particular questions across a large group of people. For me, probably a very small group of people as far as science is concerned, but I'm not being real scientific about this. So that's what motivated me to do this, and to ultimately move one more baby step towards the world being a better place.
That fits you.
It's a good question, and thank you. You are full of high praise for me this week, and I can't get enough of being around you. So with all of that said, if I'd like to redirect, my attention to the folks that are listening to this podcast. This was numero uno, and I think we just had some fun doing it. And Lisa, I want to thank you. If I was awkward at all, I just really want to say that whatever you and I make is a co-creation, and it's full of love and full of genuine and authentic caring. And I'm looking forward to speaking to more people. I'm very, very interested to see how this is going to go, but I'm being guarded in my expectations. I don't really want to affect any of the outcome. I'd like to just see what happens the way that it happens. With that said, anything else that you'd like to say about the experience? How was this for you? How did you like the questions?
Oh, it was interesting. I mean, the only thing I could think of, that because Anne Frank has been in the
Yes.
media a lot lately, and and her line was basically all people are good. So I think ultimately, I mean, that already anyhow, but I think it will come through in a deeper thread after these questions.
Well, good. I hope you have an amazing evening. And I'm looking forward to spending more time with you very shortly. I know we get to see each other at least once or twice a week. So with that said, thank you for being on this podcast. Number one, you are my number one, okay?
Thank you for having me.
And folks at home, thank you for tuning in. And I can't wait to hear about, what you think of what we're doing. If you'd like to be a future person of interest on the 100-person dozen question experiment project, then you can put a comment below or send an email to me, bill@pds2k.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. That said, good night, and thank you all very much.
You've been listening to Simple Questions for 100 People, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.